So you guys seem to really like the session tour that I did. I have to set up for a kind of a unique situation here in the studio. Still recording, still a band, but there's the added piece of this that we want as much of this live recorded as possible. So there's a whole lot of things to take into account, mic choices that need to happen, general placement in the room. And if you guys want to come along for the thought process and what goes into all that, here we go. Let's flip this bad boy around. So this is the studio. There is also this back here, but this being video, I kind of want to get them in generally the same position. So we're gonna be dealing over here. So the things that I know are coming: drum set, bass, 2 electric guitars, 1 acoustic guitar. That'll be a challenge when there's live drums in the room, but we can make it work. We also have somebody who's gonna be playing Rhodes, which we have to get. We're gonna set up a controller in case they need to use B3 or anything like that. So this thing is a massive gobo. Basically from this side, it's just a 2x4 structure that has a bass trap in the middle of it. Around that, there's 2 more bass traps. And then on that, there's 2 more bass traps. So there's a ton of mass here. And that's exactly what we want. I plan to put this basically right in this area. The idea being that the drummer's down there and the acoustic player still needs to be in the shot. It's short enough that this could still be line of sight and you still have that connection as a band, but there's so much here. It'll help mitigate bleed. It's not gonna completely get rid of it, but it'll help. Now the other kind of confusing part of this is going to be vocals. We're not totally sure how vocals are going to go down. We want to capture a live performance, but that needs to be controlled. I'm in a video. Do you want to see the setup?
Setup?
Yeah, come look. Huh?
Ooh.
Cool. I've got my light.
Are you filming it?
Yeah, I am.
What's this thing?
That's a gobo. I actually just told them it was a gobo.
Oh.
Yell into it.
Ah!
You want to see how it works? We're talking. Now slowly sink down here. We're talking. Can you
Yeah?
hear me as good as you did before?
No.
That's the whole thing. It blocks sound.
Cool.
E-learning at the studio.
Yeah. Think so.
All right, let me know if you need anything. Snow days. Where the heck was I? You need a pen? Okay. Okay. The general idea here is that these clients can walk into a space and it just work. Obviously, we're gonna have to set levels. We're gonna have to do certain things to get the final product where it needs to be, but so much of that stress is gone for them and for me because it works. And then we can get down to the choices that matter. Like, is that mic the right mic? We know it works. We know that line works. So we can make informed decisions that aren't just dealing with the clock anymore. So where do you start with something like this? Bass is a DI. That's easy. Choice of DI will come into play. The Rhodes and a controller, those are super easy. It's just gonna come down to where that's gonna be. Other than that, we have the vocal and the acoustic, which I think we have taken care of. The 2 electrics, which they're bringing 1 amp and then they're gonna use 1 of mine. Vocals would be the main thing, and getting that Loudon on there is gonna take care of so many issues for me. So, past that, the acoustic mic. Let's take a walk. Love having this on wheels. So this is the equipment wall. This is where all the mics stay, where all the DIs and guitar pedals and stuff like that stay, but everything's here so I can see it. I found out when I was doing sessions, I would be so habit driven that I keep my mics in their cases, they're in a shelf, they're put away, they're out of sight, out of mind, but I would never use them. If I hadn't touched it in a while, it just went to the bottom of the pile. So I kept using what was already out. This way, I see everything. It gets me to think about things in a little bit of a different way, and I like that. First thing when we're here, I know we're gonna need a DI for the bass. Boom. Easy choice, the red DI. I love this thing. But we're getting ahead of ourselves. Let me get my journal. Okay, I need a table to work on, so let's roll over, just a Mesa cab for fun. Why not? Writing all this stuff out, helps me every time. Not just for the setup process, but for later, if there's an issue or I want to make a change, I can see everything super fast. I know some people do this on a computer. I like to write it out because it gets me thinking about stuff. And the spiral's on top because I'm left-handed and I don't have to deal with all that crap. Quickly laying out the sources that I know that I have. Kick in, kick out, snare top, snare bottom, hi-hat, tom 1, tom 2, overhead left, overhead right. And then I think I'm gonna have a room close. I would really like to have a room close mic because I don't know if my room far or room mid is gonna work because of the nature of this session. So I really wanna have like a close room and I want it to be something not transient heavy. So my mind goes to ribbon when I think that. So let's put room close here and that's gonna be mono. Because if I get a close stereo ribbon, it just never acts the way you want it to. So I'm gonna put the room close. I already know I want an R44 on that. I'm not gonna use it anywhere else in this session. Wouldn't really work anywhere else in this session, but it's great for that purpose. So I'm gonna say my room mid, my stereo rooms, room left, room right. That's gonna be an R88, just a stereo mic that I can move around and set up in the room wherever it sounds appropriate. That is super handy because you're only moving one mic, and in a session like this where I don't need too many trip hazards because there's a lot of people and there's gonna be people filming too. So we're gonna go with the R88 on that one. And that's a great room sound anyway. I love that. So you can start to see we're starting to work backwards here. That's all of our drums. Bass. We're just gonna take a DI because they're not gonna bring an amp anyway. A red DI, done. And I'm gonna send that into a Vintech 573, which is fantastic on bass. I've had this discussion with another bass player, session guy, engineer, producer. Vintech 573s on bass are just money, period. So let's write that down. We have the red DI into the 573. So what I'm starting to do is laying out my source, the mic or DI, and then a mic preamp and where that goes. And then after that, I can decide, do I want a compressor? Do I want an EQ on that thing? This is where all of that starts for me. So after bass, we're gonna have Rhodes. I know I need a DI on that, but I'm not sure what I want just yet. I'm thinking an API. I'm thinking this thing is actually a pretty cool DI. It's meant for guitar, but it's got a killer EQ on there and a super nice compressor. Killer DI, but I'm gonna hold off on that. EG1, this is where I'm not totally sure what's gonna happen. So I'm gonna set up a left and a right. They're not really gonna be stereo, but it lets me know there's two possible sources for this source. I know one of them are gonna use one of my cabs. I really wanna use the Fried Egg audio cab for this. It's the most high fidelity, most versatile thing I can put on any guitar amp. I know I just made a video about the vintage 30s. This isn't a session where that's gonna shine. Fried Egg, on the other hand, I can put it on any session and it sounds magic. So EG1, left, right, EG2, left, EG2, right. I'm thinking a combination of 57s and then possibly bomblet here. This thing is killer. It does break up, so I'm gonna have to reach for the pad. I kind of thought I didn't like it because it feels like it wants to break up so fast. I'm gonna give this thing another try because it sounds so good on guitars. I love this mic. So let's set this out. Don't know exactly where that's gonna go, but it is gonna pair with a 57. I've also got this 1973 from Soyuz. It sounds good on so many things, but I haven't settled on what to use it for yet. I might try this on an electric. I'm gonna set this aside and we'll see what we dig. KSM 32s are always a really good natural option. It's gonna spit that source out right back at you. There's a couple more 017s up here. I have an 017 tube set up for vocal overdubs. That's gonna stay put. If we have vocal overdubs and the Loughton isn't the sound we're going for, we're gonna go with the 017 tube. So that's gonna stay in there. I do have one more 017 tube and an 017 FET. The FET sounds insane on acoustics, but this may not be the right session for that because of the amount of bleed. I really want to see if I can get away with it though. The other thing that I can do, because these are fixed pattern and I can't change the pattern of these. I know I have a gobo set up on the acoustic. I can go with something like the 313, or I have an AKG C414 as well. I think right now that's on snare bottom. I don't necessarily need it there for this particular session, but if I go with one of those, I can set it to figure 8 pattern and have the acoustic player set basically to the side of the drum set. So I can use that pattern to help reject even more of what could possibly be coming off of that thing. Actually, what may be a better idea, if that gobo ends up blocking the sound in the way I hope it does, I could set this up very, very close to the gobo. So drums, gobo, acoustic, and then this is gonna reject anything coming off the sides. So side reflections that may sneak into this mic would be rejected by the pattern. Even though I love the 017 in this situation, or even the 013s, these things are killer on acoustic, but the pickup pattern may not work for what I'm trying to do. The other option would be to use a dynamic mic, an SM7. This is amazing on acoustics. Just because it's not going to be as sensitive as a condenser, this might be the right decision. And then as far as preamp, I might go with like a 1073. That way I can have an EQ and do some carving on that thing. On the vocal, I know I want my 1084. It's just great on a vocal. If I have the ability to use that on a vocal, I'm going to. And I'm gonna wanna compress that a little bit. I'm gonna save the distressor for that vocal mic as well. I'm probably not gonna compress much else just because I don't know exactly what I'm getting into with the session, but I can make those decisions later. So for acoustic, let's mark down either the SM7, 314 or 414, and then one of the Neves. That way we have an EQ. The only other thing to think about, vocals, which we've already figured out, we're going to use the 208, and then BGVs, which may be overdubbed. If we can get away with it, I'm going to try to make sure we overdub those BGVs. We can set up something like an MD421 or even an SM58, a dynamic mic for sure, because of that proximity to the drum set. Something that's easier to compress. It's just going to pick up what's right in front of it, and then I can position it best I can to reject that drum set. So with all this in my head now, I'm going to go back to the drum set. Kick in, 91, kick out. I've actually been liking a D6 on the kick out. It doesn't have that gnarly attack, but it has that crazy exaggerated low end, so I'm kind of liking it as a kick out mic right now. Snare top, we're going to go with a Grinelli 57 that has it's basically shaped like an L, and it does not have a transformer in it. It's just basically my go-to snare mic if I want that 57 sound. So my G57, snare bottom, I don't really care, whatever's left. Hi-hat, right now there's an RE20 over there. I might want to steal that for background vocals, but I'm gonna hold off on that mic decision. Tom 1, normally I would go with these DM20s, and I love the way they sound. Loughton sent over a couple more mics, the 308s. I tried them real quick, and the rejection's pretty nuts. You gotta be pretty careful about where you put them. I actually have tried them on grand piano live on stage for a Christmas service, and that piano sound was unbelievable.
But this is the broadcast booth.
That piano sounds so good. And the bleed, it's like 7 or 8 feet from a drum set, and it sounds so good. The issues that they were having during that, I was running broadcast audio, they could not get the level of the piano where it needed to be. They're using Neumann 184s, which is a fantastic mic, but that thing's on stage on a really, really loud stage. And we're talking, this is a 9-foot grand piano right next to a drum set. You got the deck stacked against you. So Loughton had just sent me those mics. I took them and I put them on that grand, and it was perfect. It worked really, really well. And so far I have 2 of those campuses that I want to buy some. So I don't know what Loughton Audio is doing over there, but they are wizards, and we're going to use those on our toms. They also sent me a couple mics to try on overheads, and I'm stoked to try them because if they end up working, they are by far the most affordable option that could be there, which I'm not butthurt about, because putting 017s up on overhead, although it sounds awesome, it's not practical to hang $11,000 over your drum set. So I could literally cut that by a factor of 20. Oh my God. Literally cut that by a factor of almost 20. And let's give them a try. I'm sure they don't sound 20 times bad. So the only things left to figure out then are the snare bottom, the hi-hat. I don't care what that is. It could be an afterthought. And the electric guitar mics, we have some good ideas. Now we just got to get setting up. And I found my 414 sitting on the shelf up here. So I'm going to start with this on acoustic. So we're just going to stack all this stuff on top of the cab, and this will just be my cart for the day. Here we go. I'm going to need to move these cabs out of the way, because although they are cool, this does not fit the vibe of the band that's coming in. I can show you something I don't think you guys have ever seen. This is my little storage closet. Back here is where I keep cables, magnetic strips from Harbor Freight are the bomb. Cables hanging up here. Mic stands just magnetized to the wall. It's perfect. So handy. There we go. So let's go with the 414 on acoustic, because my thought is to set it to figure 8, and I'm either going to reject this way, keeping any reflection that's coming off the sides if this gobo does its job, or like this. We can decide that in the moment. I have this thing hanging low. That way I can keep it covered by more of that gobo and possibly get a little bit more control out of it that way. Let's figure out electric guitars. Okay. So this is one of my vocal booths here. It goes pretty deep this way, and there's a side that we can also record vocals. This is if we're doing vocal overdubs after the fact, so the 017 tube is already set up here, ready to go. On the other side of the room, I've got a couple cabs set up. And in this space back here, I'm going to use the Fried Egg Audio cab. It is by far the most versatile thing that I have. I think I'm going to mic that with a 57 and a JZ Mics Vintage 11. They are two very different mics, but those are two very different speakers in that cab. So if I mic the dark speaker with a dark mic like a Vintage 11, it'll accentuate those differences and get me like a really hi-fi picture of what's happening. And then I know the other guitar player is bringing an AC 15, which I'm gonna mic with probably a 57 and a bomblet. So I'll get those things set up. I'll get the lines checked so that we can just dump this in and it's ready to go. Let's go handheld for the drums. By the way, this will be the little bass corner here. We've got the red DI set up here. The room mic for the drums will kind of be about here, which isn't too far from the drums, but if I start getting farther, I'm worried about getting noise from the other people in the group. Come on, autofocus, don't fail me. General setup for the drums right here. So we've got an R44 that's going to be pretty close to the drum set, and that's basically just going to be like a crush mic. On the kick, we've got a 91 on the inside and a D6 on the outside. That D6 might change. So on the snare, on the top we've got a Granelli 57 here that has the L. On the bottom we're going with a Beta 57. Doesn't really matter. Got the RE20 sitting here, just need to pull up a stand. And then we've got these Loudons, these 308s. These are killer and they reject bleed like crazy. I'm excited to try these out. The Loudon Audio LA 120s. I have two of those. If these work out, this is a very affordable overhead, and he assured me that I'm gonna like them, but I can't wait to actually try it out. Let's check out Keys World here. Not totally sure what we're gonna need this for, but I pulled the Rhodes over. Down here we've got a DI. That's just a Countryman Type 85, not super colored, so we can do whatever we need to with the Rhodes. This can be a B3 if we need it to be, and then we've got our upright if we need that. We're on the other side of this gobo. is where our acoustic mic is gonna sit. I'm gonna try to keep this as close to this thing as the player is comfortable on a figure 8, with the idea being that it's gonna reject the sides. So with the drum set being down there, hopefully it'll control as much bleed as possible. And then vocalist will be over here on an L208 that sounds really good on vocals and rejects bleed again. So we may get a usable track from the vocalist, something like this, facing away or facing towards the band, but the mic is facing away, so we can control bleed that way. Everybody has line of sight. Guitar players can basically stand wherever they want, and then the cabs will be over here in this room, as well as our overdub vocal mic. So there we go.